What if I told you that the strength you've been waiting for is already here? Not out there in the world, not in someone's approval, not in the money you haven't earned yet or the peace you hope will come someday, but right now, inside of you. No, this isn't about religion. It's not about pretending to be enlightened or suppressing how you feel. It's about remembering. Remembering that you've walked through storms before, that you've survived moments you thought would break you. And in those moments, there was something inside you. Call it presence, call it awareness, call it God that didn't flinch. That part of you is still here. But here's the truth most people forget. We get swept into the chaos of the world. Someone says something cruel and we instantly react. A plan falls apart and our whole mood unravels. Why? Because we've been taught to live from the outside in. We wait for good news to feel good. We wait for people to treat us right before we decide we're worthy. But there is another way, a quieter way, a way where you live from the inside out, where your peace isn't determined by the weather of life, but by the climate of your inner world. And that way begins with one simple shift, acting as if you already contain what you seek. This isn't fake it till you make it. That's performance. That's exhausting. This is remembering that the strength, the grace, the power, it's already in you. You just haven't been using it. Think about it. Most of us go through the day like sailors screaming at the wind. We try to control what cannot be controlled. The traffic, the news, the opinions of others. We wrestle with the world hoping that if we just worry hard enough, we can bend life to our will. But has that ever worked? Worry is not wisdom. It's imagination turned against us. The more we chase the illusion of control, the more powerless we feel. But when you stop, truly stop, and remember that you don't need to control everything, something changes. You begin to reclaim your attention, your presence, your breath. And that is where your power has been hiding all along. Let me tell you a story, one you've probably heard before, but listen again with different ears. There was once a farmer. One day his horse ran away. The neighbors said, "That's such bad luck." The farmer simply said, "Maybe." The next day the horse returned and brought 3 wild horses with it. The neighbors exclaimed, "Wow, such good luck." Again the farmer said, "Maybe." Later his son tried riding one of the wild horses and broke his leg. The neighbors sighed, "What terrible luck." You know what the farmer said by now, maybe? A week later, soldiers came through the village to draft young men for war. His son with the broken leg was spared. The neighbors gasped, "Incredible luck." And still the farmer said, "Maybe." Why do we tell this story? Because the point is not about luck. It's not even about the events. It's about perspective. The farmer never fought life. He didn't waste his energy labeling things as good or bad. He didn't resist the flow. He just observed. He adjusted. And that is what real control looks like. Not control over what happens, but over how we meet what happens. So let me ask you, when was the last time you paused in the middle of a difficult moment and just watched it? Didn't resist, didn't label, just breathed and allowed it to be what it was. Probably not often, right? Most of us clench the steering wheel when we're late. We replay imaginary arguments while washing dishes. We obsess over what could go wrong, thinking we're somehow preparing, but really we're just draining our life force. Here's a radical idea. Next time you're stuck in traffic, notice the grip in your hands, the tension in your jaw. Ask yourself, is my frustration moving this car any faster? And then laugh. Seriously. Laugh at the absurdity of trying to push reality with your emotions. That laugh, that's your first act of freedom. Because for a split second you remembered you're not powerless, you're just distracted. Real power isn't loud, it isn't about domination or proving a point. It's about choosing where your attention goes. It's about the moment you decide that you will no longer be at the mercy of every external trigger. And sometimes all it takes is 3 seconds. 3 seconds to pause, 3 seconds to breathe, 3 seconds to remember who you are beneath the stress, beneath the stories. When you master those 3 seconds, you begin to touch something sacred. Not religious sacred, human sacred. Something ancient, something quiet, something deeply unmistakably yours. Here's something wild. Your greatest superpower is probably the one you've overlooked your entire life. It's not your intelligence, not your ambition, not even your resilience. It's your attention. Where your attention goes, your energy follows. And where your energy flows, your life begins to take shape. But most of us are leaking our attention all day long. We get an angry email, and for the next 2 hours, our mind is writing rebuttals we'll never send. Someone insults us, and we carry their words like poison in our bloodstream. We scroll social media comparing, judging, performing, and we wonder why we feel so fragmented by the end of the day. It's not that the world is too much. It's that we forgot how to guard the gate of our own mind. Here's a practice, simple but transformative. Next time someone throws shade at you, a snide remark, a sarcastic dig, a passive-aggressive comment, don't respond right away. In fact, don't respond at all. Just pause. Watch the insult float past you like a leaf on a river. And remind yourself, this doesn't belong to me. You don't need to carry every word someone hands you. In fact, real strength is knowing when to not engage. It's not passivity, it's mastery. Think of a martial artist. They don't flail or resist every strike. They redirect. They absorb nothing. They choose when and how to respond from a place of calm, not chaos. So when life throws you turbulence, a canceled flight, a rude cashier, a friend who flakes, practice the redirect. Maybe the delayed train becomes time to journal. Maybe the difficult conversation becomes a chance to listen instead of defend. Maybe the criticism becomes a mirror that helps you check in with your own energy. And when you do this enough, you start to feel something subtle but undeniable. A shift. You stop screaming at the wind, and instead, you learn to sail with it. You begin to notice patterns, how certain thoughts stir certain feelings, how certain reactions lead to the same outcomes over and over again. And suddenly you're not the sailor anymore, you're the captain. That's when the real inner power begins. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Let's do something together. Picture yourself standing in front of a mirror. Not checking your hair, not judging your skin, not critiquing your posture. Just looking, quietly, honestly. Now look deeper past the surface, past the name, the story, the roles you play. Can you see it? That quiet presence behind your eyes. That was you. Not the you others label, not the you shaped by wounds or wins, but the awareness behind it all. Some call it the soul, others call it spirit. I'm not interested in names. I'm interested in what happens when you start to live from that place. Most people never do. They look in the mirror and see a collage of their past, a patchwork of mistakes, disappointments, and secondhand beliefs. They say, this is who I am because of what I've been through. And so they shrink, waiting for the world to fix itself before they give themselves permission to rise. But what if instead you saw something divine? Not in a religious sense, but in the sense that there's something in you that cannot be broken. A stillness that doesn't flinch when the chaos begins. A presence that doesn't need to prove or perform. Imagine what would change if you led with that energy. When someone criticizes you, you don't crumble because you're rooted. When life throws curveballs, you don't panic because you're anchored. Here's a practice. Next time you're stressed, close your eyes. And instead of reacting from fear or habit, visualize your reflection, not as you normally see it, but as the most calm, grounded, unshakable version of you. Notice their breath, their posture, their quiet confidence. Then ask, what would this version of me do right now? Don't look for drama. The answer is usually simple. Breathe, wait, say less, walk away. The strongest actions are often the softest. And here's the wild thing, this version of you, it's not a fantasy. It's not a character you're pretending to be. It's already in you. It always was. You've just forgotten, and every time you pause, breathe, and choose that version, you remember. That's how transformation works, not through big moments, but through 1,000 small choices that say, I remember who I am. Here's something most people never realize. The person you see in the mirror isn't someone you're trying to become. It's who you've been all along under the noise beneath the fear behind the masks you were taught to wear. But life happens, childhood happens, disappointment happens, and slowly we forget. We get conditioned to believe we're only as good as our last win, or as lovable as the people who didn't leave. And so we start looking outside for what was always inside. We wait to be chosen before we act like we're worthy. We wait to feel strong before we speak up. We wait to feel calm before we breathe deeply. But here's the sacred truth. Feeling doesn't come before action. Action comes before feeling. It's not fake, it's practice. Just like a musician doesn't wait to feel like playing before touching their instrument, you don't have to wait to feel powerful before embodying power. You show up first, you breathe first, you move first. And slowly your mind catches up, your nervous system catches up, your confidence returns. Let's talk about the 3-second rule, not the food one, the inner one. There's a moment, a tiny space between what happens and how you respond. Someone says something triggering, your body tenses, your heart races, old patterns start to take over. But before the reaction, there's a sliver of time, a breath. That's the gap. Most people miss it. They jump straight from stimulus to reaction like a reflex. No thought, no awareness, just autopilot. But if you stretch that gap even by 3 seconds, you create room. Room to ask, what version of me is about to show up? The wounded child, the people pleaser, the overreactor, or the one who remembers. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe again. 3 breaths, that's all. Inhale, I see what's happening. Exhale, I don't need to react right away. Inhale, I choose who I want to be. And that moment, that pause becomes sacred. You're not suppressing emotion. You're not pretending everything's fine. You're choosing consciously, deliberately. And that is what rewires everything. Because now you're no longer a prisoner of your past reactions. You've become the author. And authors get to decide what happens next. Let's be honest. Some wounds don't come from strangers. They come from people we trusted, people who looked us in the eye and said, I care, and then left. Betrayal, it cuts deeper than almost anything else. It makes you question your worth, your judgment, sometimes even your sanity. You replay the moment 100 times. You imagine what you should have said, how you could have protected yourself. And somewhere in the back of your mind, there's a quiet voice whispering, how could they? Good. That's normal, that's human. But what you do next, that's where your power lives. Most people reach for revenge, not always loudly. Sometimes it's quiet revenge, silent resentment, emotional withdrawal, proving a point. But every time you try to make them hurt like you hurt, you tie yourself to them. You become a character in their story, not the author of your own. So what's the alternative? Here's where it gets radical. What if betrayal wasn't just pain, but also an invitation? Not from the person who hurt you, but from life itself. What if this moment wasn't just breaking you, it was showing you where you still seek validation, where you still give your power away, where you've confused love with approval. This is the ancient teaching most people never hear. The people who hurt us are often our greatest instructors. They reveal our blind spots, our attachment, our unmet needs. And when we truly see it, we reclaim something far more precious than justice. We reclaim ourselves. This doesn't mean pretending you're okay, that's denial. This doesn't mean instant forgiveness, that's performance. This means sitting with the pain fully and asking, what does this moment require of me? Not what do I want to do, that's the child's question. But what would the highest version of me do now? That question, that's the gateway to freedom. Maybe it means setting a boundary without rage. Maybe it means walking away without drama. Maybe it means saying this hurt and letting that be enough. And maybe, just maybe, it means whispering in the quiet of your own heart. Thank you. Not because they were right, but because they revealed where you were still not fully you. That is the moment you begin to transform. Not into someone harder, but into someone stronger. Not someone who can't be hurt, but someone who knows how to heal. Let me share a ritual. Not a grand one. Not something you post on social media or light a candle for. It's quiet, private, just you and your breath at the end of the day. Here's how it works. Before you collapse into bed, before the distractions take over, sit, just for 5 minutes. Let the noise of the day settle like dust in water. Then ask yourself 2 questions. 1. Where today did I act from fear? Not to shame yourself, not to fix anything, just to notice. Maybe you said yes when you wanted to say no. Maybe you stayed silent when your voice wanted to rise. Maybe you over-explained yourself again just to feel safe. Just see it, that's the medicine. Because awareness is the first crack in the armor of habit. Then ask, 2. Where could I have acted from power? Not in hindsight perfection, but in honest reflection. What would your strongest self have done? Not the perfect self, but the rooted self. Maybe they would have paused, breathed, chosen curiosity instead of defensiveness. Maybe they would have walked away or walked towards something. This isn't about guilt. Guilt keeps you chained to the past. This is about alignment. And the more you do this day after day, something subtle begins to shift. At first, you'll only notice the patterns in hindsight. Then one day you'll feel it in the moment. That split second, that fork in the road where you can choose fear or power. And slowly you start choosing power more often, not with effort, not with drama, just naturally, like a plant turning toward the sun. Want to accelerate this shift? Keep a notebook by your bed, not to write paragraphs, just to track your patterns. Notice the themes, the moments that trigger your smallness, the stories you keep replaying that start with I always or I can't. That's where your work is. And don't forget this part, it's crucial. End the ritual with gratitude. Not performative, not forced. Just find one thing from your day that helped you grow. Maybe it's the moment you didn't yell, the moment you cried instead of shutting down, the stranger who smiled at you, the breath you remembered to take. Write it, speak it, feel it, then sleep. Not like someone escaping life, but like someone trusting that by simply paying attention, you are becoming who you were always meant to be. Some days the world feels heavy. You know the ones. The days where everything piles up, deadlines, responsibilities, news cycles, memories you didn't invite but still arrived. It's easy to go numb. We scroll, we snack, we binge, not because we're weak, but because no one ever taught us how to stay with ourselves when it gets hard. But there is another way. It starts here. Find a quiet place, sit down, put one hand over your heart, yes, physically, and breathe. Inhale slowly. Exhale deeply. Again and again. Now with your eyes closed, imagine light gathering in the center of your chest, a warmth, a calmness, a remembering. This light isn't something you're inventing. It's something you're uncovering. It was always there beneath the fear, beneath the roles, beneath the noise. Some call it awareness, some call it spirit. You don't need a name, you just need to feel it. Now ask silently, what would the strongest version of me do right now? Don't rush for answers, don't force wisdom. Let it rise. Sometimes it will tell you to act, send the message, make the move, take the leap. Other times it will whisper rest, wait, trust. True guidance isn't loud. It doesn't bark commands or fuel urgency. That's fear talking. Wisdom whispers. You'll recognize it not by what it says, but by how it feels grounded, slow, loving, unshaken. And if the heaviness persists, stand up. Barefoot if you can. Step onto the earth. Feel its support. Imagine roots growing from your feet, anchoring you. Now the weight isn't pressing down on you, you're pulling strength up from it. This is the secret. You don't escape the weight of the world by avoiding it. You transcend it by grounding deeper into yourself. Presence isn't some lofty spiritual concept, it's a physical practice. It's breath, posture, sensation. It's saying, I am here fully now. And as you keep practicing this, something changes. The world doesn't necessarily get lighter, but you get stronger. You start responding instead of reacting. You start pausing instead of panicking. You start noticing that the calm you were searching for was never outside you. It was inside. Waiting? Always. There's a lie we've all been taught. And it's so subtle, it sounds like wisdom. It says, when I finally make enough money, then I'll feel safe. When I lose the weight, then I'll feel confident. When the right person loves me, then I'll feel whole. When life calms down, then I'll finally start living. Sound familiar? This is the story that keeps most people stuck their entire lives, always waiting, always chasing, always almost becoming. But here's the truth. You don't become powerful after life gives you permission. You become powerful the moment you stop waiting. The moment you stop waiting to feel brave and start acting bravely. The moment you stop waiting to feel whole and show up as if you already are. This isn't pretending. This is activating. Because the truth is, action creates feeling, not the other way around. You don't wait to feel like a writer before you write. You write, and in the process you remember that you are one. You don't wait to feel peaceful before you breathe deeply. You breathe deeply and peace finds you again. You don't wait for the world to change before you change how you show up in it. You show up differently and slowly your world rearranges itself to match. This is not fake it till you make it. That phrase suggests you're putting on a mask. This is the opposite. This is removing the mask of, I'm not ready yet, of, I'm not good enough yet, of, I'm still waiting for a sign. You don't need a sign. You need a decision. Start small. Pick one area of your life where you've been waiting. And act today. as if the version of you who is already ready has taken over. Speak with their voice. Stand with their posture. Decide with their clarity. Not for performance, not to impress anyone, but to remind yourself of what has always been true. You are not becoming someone new. You are remembering someone ancient, someone wise, someone free. And how will you know it's working? You'll feel less urgency to prove. You'll feel less triggered by chaos. You'll notice more silence between the noise, more space between reaction and response. And one day, without even trying, you'll look in the mirror, and instead of seeing someone you're trying to fix, you'll see someone who's finally home. Because you are. You always were. You just needed to remember.